Hello. So today we are going to be learning Parsha Naso. And Parsha Naso begins with getting the people ready to travel from Mount Sinai and go forward into the desert. And this discusses the essentially important work of taking the tabernacle and packing it for travel. The tabernacle is the center of the Jewish world. All the tribes were camped around it, just like the area of the temple and the Temple Mount and the Holy of Holies is essential to who we are and where we are. And in the time of going from Mount Sinai, this tabernacle had to be packed up. And I want to mention that the tabernacle was also unpacked every time that the people camped anywhere. So whether it was for a day or for years, the tabernacle was set up again. So packing it and unpacking it was a major job. Now, after describing the order in which the 12 tribes of Israel traveled through the desert, the Torah tells about the census of the tribe of Levi, the tribe that was tasked with the transporting and building of the Mishkan, the tabernacle. So we have the Kohanim, who are the essential people who do the work of the Beit HaMikdash, or the tabernacle, the Mishkan, and the Leviim are the support system, also related support system to the Kohanim. So now the Torah is telling us about the Levi tribe and what they are going to do. Now, we need to know that each one of us here, we are here to be part of the collective experience of our people, because we have one major mission: to make this a world where godliness is known. That's the work of our people. And yet each of us, even though we are part of this collective mission, is given a particular part of the mission that we can carry out, whether as groups or as individuals. So let's look at how this relates to the tribe of Levi, which is one great tribe that serves in the tabernacle. Now, there are 3 Levi families, and they were given separate jobs to carry out. And like everything in the Torah, the details of the story of the Levites are just as relevant to our lives today as they were to our ancestors in the desert. We too are given the mission of the Levites to erect a home for God in a spiritual desert, which is the world that we live in. And why is it a spiritual desert? Because we don't see the reality that God is here. The truth is, I was just reading in Tanya, Sefer Tanya today, that all life is made because God is bringing life into this being. We are, each of us, alive because of God's bringing life into us. And if we could see the truth, we could see that God is the one bringing light into us, then we would look at ourselves in a different way. I mean, of course, it would be so much godly light, we wouldn't see ourselves at all, because we would just realize what the complete truth is. But just knowing that the truth is that we are godly beings because God is bringing essential light and life into us at every moment, that changes everything. So we need to know that our job is to recognize this in ourselves and in the world and what we do. Now, in order to create this sanctuary, which is this godly space in the world, we rely on the spiritual part of ourselves, on the Levite within our soul. So it's like we have a Kohen in our soul, we have a Moshe Rabbeinu in our soul, we have a Levite in our soul, and we need to recognize, that's what we're going to talk about today, the job of the Levi that's spoken of in Parsha Naso, and how this helps us to understand our own work. So the 3 tribes of Levi were Gershon, Kahat, and Merari. Now, Merari, how did it go? Gershon and Merari were given the job of transporting the curtains that covered the Mishkan and the wooden planks of the Mishkan walls. In other words, that which is going to set up the house is coming from Gershon mostly, and also from Merari. So it says here, this is in the Torah, this is the service of the Gershonite families, to serve and to carry. They shall carry the curtains of the Mishkan and the tent of meeting, its covering, and the tachash skin covering, which overlaid it, in other words, like the roof, and the screen for the entrance to the tent of Merari. So they have the walls, the planks, the roof, and the dividers, like the wall dividers between the Holy of Holies and the rest of the Mishkan. And as for the sons of Merari, this is the responsibility of their burden for all the service in the tent of meeting, the planks of the Mishkan, its bars, its pillars, and its sockets. So Merari is work on all the connecting pieces. Now, to create a sanctuary in our lives, we have to avoid the negative and pursue the positive. There are 2 steps to make our lives and ourselves into a home for God. First, we have to rid our lives of what is negative and undesirable, and then we do what is good and right. Now, we learn this, sor me'ra v'aseh tov. Turn away from evil and do good. And we'll have some examples later. The clan of Gershon carried the outer coverings of the tabernacle, which protected it from undesirable elements, because you can't just set up the table, the dining room table, on a piece of land where there's no covering and there's no protection. You have to put up the walls of the house and the roof of the house, and then put in that dining room table, because you have now set up a dining room in which to put it. So this corresponds to our job of avoiding harmful activities and influences. Now, the clan of Kahat, they were discussed in last week's Parsha. The clan of Kahat, on the other hand, carried the furnishings of the tabernacle. In other words, the Holy of Holies, the ark that carries the tabernacle, that carries the 10 Commandments, the menorah, the altar for the incense, the bread offering. In other words, the most holy furniture is taken care of by Kahat. And each of these are representing a positive attribute and activity. So the menorah is positive because it represents the whole people and bringing light into the world. Each one is positive. Now, interestingly, that Gershon was the oldest of the 3 sons. He was born before Kahat. But the one that does what we would call the most important, but is it the most important? It's the most star-studded job, is the second son, not the first son. And why was that? Well, it's necessary first to cleanse ourselves of negative behavior in order to be able to properly pursue good. Nonetheless, the clan of Kahat was counted before that of Gershon, because cleansing oneself of negativity is only a preparation for the true work, which is pursuing good. Like, for example, let's say that I want to say something to a friend, and it's really important to me to say this. And I want to say it in a way that's going to be really meaningful, so my friend understands what I'm trying to share. Sometimes it becomes worthwhile to just be quiet for a couple of moments. I know what I want to share, but sometimes I have to be quiet for a couple of moments just so that I share it in a way that's meaningful, without any negativity. I don't know if you listen to me, something. No, don't start like that. Come back and think, what is it I really want to share? And how can I share it? And that pulling back so that we can say no to, I'm not angry at her. She forgot to ask me, and this is really important for me to share with her. Sometimes I have to just pull back. I don't want to say, why didn't you ask me about this? Because that's not the point. The point is not, why didn't you ask me? The point is, I want to share it. So in our pulling back, so that we don't say things in the way we don't want to say them, so we do say it in the way we want to say it, first, we have to pull back to get rid of the negativity. And then we could go forward for what we actually want to do. So when we are trying to do our work in the world, just like the families of Gershon and Merari, we have to create walls and a roof in order to take control of our environment. It's very interesting that in Yiddish, there is an expression that says this idea has hands and feet. It's an interesting expression. What it means is not just like some airy environment, but it's like a statement that says, okay, so this is how I would like to do this, and this is when I would like to do this, and I think this could be done this way. In other words, it's an idea that you can move forward with. So the idea has hands and feet. So we have to cultivate the capacity to say no, to reject negative influences, temptations, and distractions. So that's what the family of Gershon is here for, to say, we're not just going to put down the holy things. We're going to have walls. We're going to have a roof. We're going to set it up as it belongs, which means not just anywhere, but under these boundaries. So we have to learn how to do this. But saying no isn't enough. Rejecting the distractions and negativity is not enough. Now, a lot of times people say, I have so much distraction, it's so disturbing to me. It's very hard to stop that. Why? Because we also have to have, what is it that is my mission? What do I want to be doing? If I were not distracting myself, what would I want to use this time for? Aha. Then the no to the distractions can help us actually go forward. Now, the family of Kahat is the going forward with the responsibility of transporting the vessels of the Mishkan, the ark, the menorah, the table, the altars. And the Kohanim take care of that, even though the family of Kahat is the one that's going to go further. And it says, Aaron and his sons shall finish covering the holy and all the vessels of the holy when the camp is set to travel. In other words, all the really holy objects are covered and put into bags that are made for them by the Kohanim, not by the Levites. But once the Kohanim put them into these protective coverings, following that, the sons of Kahat shall come to carry them, but they shall not touch the sacred objects, for then they will die. These are the burden of the sons of Kahat for the tent of meeting. In other words, the truly, truly holy things have privacy, because holy has to do with separate. And so the Kohanim take care of these holy objects to make sure they are separate, but yet they need to be taken care of and moved forward. So the Kahat are the ones, family of Kahat are the ones that are going to take them forward. Now, like the family of Kahat, we, in doing our own work, because we're talking about how the work of the Levites is comparable to our own work, which is the work of dedication to God. It's our responsibility to fill our space with the holy vessels, with positive experiences. So we have to be able to create within ourselves space to make holiness. Space to make holiness. It's interesting that the temple, the table, the bread table in the Ark, in the Holy of Holies, in the Mishkan, is also represented by the table in our own homes, the dining table where we eat. And this is a place that is meant to be a place of positive holy experience, a place where we eat kosher food, where we gather with family, friends, a place where we say blessings on the food. In other words, the purpose of the holy object is for holy purpose, to recognize God and thank God, which is everything that we are meant to be doing, is meant to be recognizing God. The spiritual mission of each of the Levite families is alluded to in their names. Gershon is derived from the word garesh, which means to chase away or divorce. In other words, the Gershonite family is supposed to make sure that things that are not good are external. They're out of the picture. That the family of Gershon is able to say no to what is not appropriate for our service of God. And they represented this saying no to that which wants to pull us away from our commitment to holiness. Kahat, on the other hand, is derived from the biblical word yikhat, which means to gather. Kahat teaches us to cultivate positive experiences and gather them into our sanctuary, to use them as a conduit to fulfill the purpose of our creation. It's interesting that, for example, many people say that the most disturbing things in their life is their technology, the phone, that their phone is really not good for them, it's terrible for them. And there are aspects in which that's true. But here we need Gershon and Kahat. Gershon is the one that's going to say, I do not need little bells to ring every single time somebody wants to send me a text. I don't need little bells to ring or bigger bells to ring anytime somebody sends me an email. In other words, it could be Gershon has to choose what is the no. Now, some people have a special bell for their young daughter, so that if their young daughter calls them, that bell will be a sound they recognize because they want to be there for their daughter. So Gershon is the one that has to say no to what doesn't work. In other words, no to the distractions, not to just touch the phone every 2 seconds when we don't know what to do next and go there for an answer. Gershon has to say no to that. Kahat has to say, what is it positive on this phone that I can do? For some people, it's calling their mother who lives in another country, which they are able to do in a second. Open the phone, call her. In another country, she will pick up the phone. So that is holy. That is purposeful. So we have to also be able to say no to what takes away from building our sanctuary. And the Kahat purpose is to cultivate positive experiences and gather them into the sanctuary and use them as a conduit to fulfill the purpose of our creation. So we have to say no to what's going to keep us away from doing what we're here to do. And that no is a protection, and then to go forward. Now, last week's Parsha spoke about the work of the clan of Kahat. The work of so it's very interesting that we're starting a whole new Parsha, and Kahat is over there in the last Parsha, and we begin here with Gershon. That's so interesting. You would think that it would be nice and neat to put them in the same Parsha, but no. The work of the other 2 Levite clans, Gershon and Merari, are described in this week's Parsha. Now, that seems strange. Why is there a break between the Parshas in the middle of the story of the Levites' conscription? And another question is, Gershon was the oldest son of Levi, followed by Kahat and Merari. Okay, so it seems like Kahat is taken out of its place, but we see that really, Parsha Naso is beginning with the continuation of the narrative that was begun before. So the Levite clan is all being put here, and they're all going to do the service together. Okay, so Kahat, like we said, the Medrash is giving precedence to the clan of Kahat because they carried the Ark of the Covenant and the tablets. So because they carried the Torah, that means that this is the way that we bind ourselves to God. The work of Kahat is how we ourselves connect ourselves to God. And that's described first because that's the main thing. How do we connect ourselves to God? Now, the word for the name of this Parsha is Naso. Naso means taking a census, which also means lifting up the head. Why are the people being counted here before they set out for the desert? And really, in a certain way, God is the one who is counting the people. We're actually not allowed to count people. People give us a coin, a half a shekel, and they're counted in this way, counted by the coins. But there's a lot to be said about that. But when we are counted by God, we know that we count. And I have to say that each one of us has something that we could do that no one else in the world could do. We have our own talents and our own purpose, and no one else can do it. That's something we need to know. We're not what they call just like everyone else. There is no just like everyone else. God doesn't make two snowflakes alike. So even though we're part of a larger mission, the part that we do is the part that was given to us. And when God counts us, what he's doing is bringing out our latent capacities, our capabilities that we don't even know. And that's necessary for the dedication to God's work when they're going to go. You know, sometimes somebody is asked to speak. They go to an event and they go, and their job is to bring the speaker. And as the speaker is arriving, he's going, and he realizes he can't do it. And he says, you are going to have to get up and speak. Such something once happened like that with me. I went, me? What? That was a very large group, and it was a topic I've never spoken about before. And it was like, what? And then he said, but I can't do it. And you are the person who could do it. What? So when he said, listen, you are the one that has to do it, that's like saying you count. The job was mine, but now it's yours. And we see this in all kinds of situations. A young woman becomes a mother. She goes, I don't know how to do this. What am I supposed to do? Well, you're on. So sometimes her mother comes and teaches her, how to bathe the baby. But guess what? She'll have to figure it out because you're on. That means you count. We are in this world and we count and we are on. And that's what it is. So when God counts us, which is what's going on in this Parsha, our heads are being lifted up. We're not like that. We're like that. Whoa, we're on. And because this is the name of the whole Parsha describes the uplift that preceded the journey into the wilderness. And the Parsha begins with, take the census of the clan of Gershon too. So the clan of Kahat, which carried the ark, that's the real means by which we raise our heads. So now we're talking about, what does it mean, the name of the Parsha? What does it mean that being counted, we raise our heads? And we're saying here, the Torah says that really Parsha Kahat, when we talk about Kahat, that is the main raising of the consciousness, that we're ascending to levels of divine consciousness through learning Torah. And that's the true raising of our heads, is learning Torah. That's why Kahat is spoken about first. Now, when our mind is elevated through our Torah learning, our whole life is elevated with it. So once the clan of Kahat has been lifted up, we can raise the clan of Gershon too. Okay, so what we're saying is that Gershon is also raised by Torah. Kahat means that all of us, each of us, has to know that connecting to God is the main purpose, and that's what we're here to do. And this lifts our head up, because then we can say, as the Alter Rebbe said, not what do I need, but what am I needed for? So when we say, what am I needed for? Then I can say, okay, how can I build the holiness that is actually in the world and make it known? Now, the Torah's power to raise us higher than the material world is experienced most fully, not when it raises our consciousness, but when it elevates our mundane daily lives. So what we learn in Torah has to come into our lives and has to affect what we're doing. So to learn is important, but we have to take it with us into our actual lives. That's what it means, like an idea with hands and feet. That when we learn Torah, which is much more than an idea, it's godly teaching to us, what are we meant to do with it? So there's the level of the consciousness of learning Torah, which is the highest, but then we need to bring it down into the world, into the lowest. So both are essential. And that's why the Parshas of Bamidbar and Naso are split between the consensus of the clans of Kahat and Gershon. So putting the clan of Gershon at the beginning of Parshas Naso, which is raising the head, Kahat is not discussed in raising the head, but it's a prelude to raising the head. Here it's saying there is an advantage of action over study. That's always the conversation that the Torah has, which is more important, learning Torah or doing mitzvahs. The fact is you can't do mitzvahs if you don't learn Torah, otherwise you don't know what to do. So it's in the learning Torah that it brings us to do a mitzvah. But it has to be brought, the Torah learning has to be brought into mitzvah. So Torah study is uniting us consciously with God, but that only affects our intellect. Whereas in contrast, performing the commandments, which we are just learning from the Torah study, is uniting us with God in ways that we may not be aware of. But this union pervades the physical body. So when we are doing a mitzvah, we don't always see what we're doing. We do it. We don't always see what we're actually accomplishing, but it comes into our whole being, into our bodies, into our lives, and this connects us with God in another deeper way. So all of Bamidbar and all of Naso and half of next week's Parsha, Bahalotecha, are concerned with the preparations for the journey. Everything described in these Parshas is a prerequisite that we have to complete before we go out into the spiritual desert in order to subdue it to holiness. So this is something, all this that we're talking about, we have to have a vision. How do we make that vision come into reality? Once we have been constricted into God's army, the next phase means that we're going forward to serve God. The next phase of preparation is self-purification. So we say, we are here for a purpose to make this a godly world. That's my job. But in order to do this, how are we going to do this in a world where there's a battle against evil? Even in ourselves, we gave the example of technology, how easy it is to get sidetracked by technology. And that's a battle with evil that's within us, because Whew, how many people in the world, we should all be protected, get up in the morning and they go from movie to movie to movie to movie all day? That's what they do, because they don't have a vision of their purpose and they don't realize how essential they are to the world and that they do have a purpose. Once we realize we have a purpose, then we have to make a plan and take out what is not purposeful. So we need to first rid ourselves as far as possible of any trace of evil within, which means also to rise above what is petty or mundane. We could say, do I really need to do this now? There are methods for this. Some people say, I'm going to wait 2 minutes. Some people actually put it on a timer. And they say, let me pull back for 2 minutes. I'm not going to do this. Within this 2 minutes, I'm just going to take it easy for 1 minute. And then I'm going to say, what is it I really need to do right now? What am I needed for right now? And then we say, oh, that, not that. And then we're also able to take away what's not for us because it's just a sidetrack. Now, throughout the Torah, God connects the commandments, even the negative ones, thou shalt not, with the words, be holy, for I am holy. The first of the 10 commandments opens with the words, I am the Lord your God, meaning that every commandment that follows comes from creating a relationship and connection with God. That's why the first word, the first commandment that we hear on Mount Sinai is, I'm the Lord your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt. I'm yours. I want a relationship with you. Not only do I want to, I have a relationship with you. I took you out of Egypt. I was there with you. I want you to have a relationship with me. That's the job, to have a relationship with God. So this comes from right away from the first commandment. Now, holiness holiness and wholeness stems from connection and striving to reach and actualize our highest selves. Now, holiness also has to do with separation. Something that is holy is kept separate, whether it is closing the bedroom door when the guests come, or whether it's when you take off your pearls that you don't just throw them in a box with other stuff, but you put them in a bag so they shouldn't get scratched, and you keep them separate. So holiness has to do with keeping things separate. And the purpose of it is so we can actualize our highest self, that the bedroom door is opened at the right time, that the pearls are taken out to be worn at the right time. So in other words, it's the protection that allows for the utilization of the holy connection, that we could get to that. Now, we spoke about Kahat doing one side and Gershon doing another. But we need to know that they're like a two-sided coin, avoiding evil and doing good. And the key to understand this duality is to know when to do what, and how through the doing of good, we can automatically avoid the evil. So how could it be that when doing the good, we automatically avoid the evil? Now, this has to do with keeping our eye on what we would like to see or do as our mission. So the more that we have a clear focus on what we are needed for and what our mission is, the less likely we are to get sidetracked. Because if I know this is what I want to do, then that is what I focus on. For example, maybe your best friend comes in from out of town for 2 days and you haven't seen her in a long time. Okay, so first you made space and you moved the dentist appointment because these are the 2 days you have with your friend. So you made space. If someone is young and their children need carpool, they figured out their friend, they switched days. You'll take the children this day, I'll take them that day. So now I have 2 full days. So this is the Gershon, this is the avoiding evil. But on those 2 days, we are focused on our time together with our friend. We are focused on connection. We're focused on mission. So when we focus on the good that we're going forward to do, then we're not focused on problems. So the focus is essential, that we need to learn how to focus on what is going to keep us connected to God. This is really, really so important to have a purpose and to know what our purpose is. So in Torah, we learn that our purpose is to bring godliness into the world. How do we do it? As a whole, each of us has our mitzvot. We go toward Shabbat. We keep Shabbat. We don't eat what's not kosher. We do eat what is kosher. We have a mezuzah on the door. In other words, we have what we need to do to help our connection, and we focus on this. Then we could see whether we need to clear the space to accomplish or to prepare for accomplishing our mission, or whether we're ready to go forward. Like, let's say a person decides, I am going to eat healthy food. I decided I need to eat healthy food. Okay, good. That's it. Now I have chosen something that is going to bring good results that is important to me. Now, sometimes that is connected to deciding what not to eat and what we might need to take out of the pantry. In other words, the positive decision to eat healthy or to speak in a good way or whatever it is that we're choosing to do, that is the mission. And we're ready to go for it. And sometimes we're able to do it right away without complexity. But there's also a little bit of a no in it. I'm not going to eat that. I'm going to throw that away. I'm not going to buy that anymore, because the purpose is to make the positive choices into the new dedication that we've made, so that the positive choice becomes a reality. And this is something that we have to figure out when to do what. A lot of young mothers are working on not yelling at their children because they have young children. The children do all kinds of things, and they don't know how to accomplish this because they don't do that. Why did you do that? But they don't want to talk like that. So they have to work on it. So the decision is, I'm going to speak in a sweet way, in a kind way to my children, and have a positive. Now, sometimes they need to say, like we said with Gershon, before I respond, I'm going to take a breath and I'm going to count to 5 before I say anything. So that might help them to come out and say something kind. Like, I see that you spilled that. Okay, so you know where to get the rag or the towel so that you could wipe it up. Saying it in a calm tone, teaching them how to handle it is very beautiful. And it's that ability to hold back, to train ourselves in how to speak, that is the support in action of how we're going to go forward. Now, it's very interesting that there's an idea taught by the Hasidic master, the Maggid of Mezerich, who was the student of the Baal Shem Tov, who explained the psalm where it says, Sormei Ravi Yaseh Tov, stay away from evil and do good, to truly mean stay away from evil by doing good. That's a beautiful high level that we don't have to worry so much about what we're not going to do, but that we should go right for the mission of doing it positively. And when we do it positively, we're going to keep training ourselves to do it positively. So they're both connected. When we do something positive, we're actually naturally removed from the negative. So that's the work that we have to do in order to go forward. Now, finally, the fact that all of this preparation, this elevation through Torah study takes place in the desert, because our Parshas are now, they're going to walk into the desert instead of their encampment. It shows that the purpose and truest fulfillment of Torah study is to transform the world, even the barren wasteland of the spiritual void that could be inside of us or outside of us, and to make our world where we are and where we have the ability to make a difference into God's home on earth. And I want to also add that everything we do that is our purpose has much more of an effect than we think it does. When we say something to someone, they are affected by it. And how they then act and what they say to other people has cosmic repercussions, because if I speak to 10 people and they speak to 10 people, it's 100 people, and they speak to 10 people, it becomes 1,000 people, and we are changing the world. So what we are doing, each one of us, makes a difference. Smiling at somebody, saying a kind word to somebody, instead of yelling at the child, oh, you spilled that, to say, oh, okay, well, you know, where's the towel that I use for wiping things up? Okay, you could wipe that up kindly, and the child doesn't feel blamed or shamed. The child now sees, oh, I know what to do myself. I don't have to wait for my mommy to do it. I can do it. And they do it, and then they take away the towel, and you look and say, oh, that's good. Now it looks good. And so we need to know that in our working to make a godly world, whether we're holding back from something that's not going to be godly, or whether going forward, makes a difference, not only in our own personal world, but in the whole world. So may we be blessed to accomplish what we are in the world to do, and may it be with joy.